Pretty big company you have there.
I suppose so.
And I see you also own Honeybird and Hunron!
My critique of the film Beemovie is centered around its reinforcement of capitalist ideology and the exploitation of the working class. First and foremost, the film portrays the bees as autonomous workers who are free to choose their occupation, yet they are still bound by their duties to the hive and ultimately to the queen bee. This reinforces the idea of false consciousness, or the belief that workers are in control of their own destiny and that the hierarchies they exist under are natural and necessary for the functioning of society. In reality, workers are coerced into accepting their positions in the workforce and are often subject to injustices such as low wages, long hours, and unsafe working conditions. Furthermore, the film portrays a world where nature is dominated and controlled by humans who exploit the bees for their own benefit. The bees in the film are depicted as providing an essential service to human society, pollinating crops that ultimately serve capitalist interests rather than the needs of the workers. This is significant as it reinforces the idea that nature should be controlled in the interests of humans and the capitalist system. The film also promotes the idea of individualism, which is a core tenet of capitalist ideology. The protagonist, Barry Benson, is encouraged to follow his individual desires to escape the confines of his own predetermined career path. His decision to sue the humans for stealing money is framed as a victory for individual freedom. This supports the idea of capitalist competition, where individuals are pitted against each other in a race to obtain greater wealth and success, rather than working together for the common good. However, it is important to note that the film can also be interpreted in a positive light for Marxist analysis. The portrayal of the workers in the hive as equal and cooperative is an implicit critique of capitalist hierarchies that dictate that workers should be subordinate to their managers and bosses. The film also shows that the workers can resist unbending rules and authoritarianism. Additionally, the film's commentary on the environmental destruction caused by capitalism is an important Marxist message. The film shows that the domination of nature by humans is not just unethical, but it is also unsustainable. Capitalism is not able to sustain itself in the long term because it is based on the unsustainable practices of ecological exploitation and the environmental destruction. While the film Beemovie promotes capitalist ideologies of individualism and false consciousness, its underlying Marxist message of worker cooperation and resistance, critique of artificial hierarchies, and commentary on the unsustainable nature of capitalism should not be overlooked. It is important to critically analyze media with a Marxist perspective, to understand the ways in which capitalist ideology is reproduced, and to seek alternatives to it that promote the interests of the working class and the environment, not just the interests of capitalists.
After this is all over, you'll see how by taking our money, you're not only taking away everything we have, but everything we are.
In Beemovie, it is necessary to analyze the relationship between labor and society that is portrayed in the film. The main character, Barry B. Benson, is a hard-working bee who is disillusioned with the monotonous nature of his job as a pollen jock. He dreams of a more fulfilling work experience and rebellion against the norm. However, the capitalist system in which the bees operate prevents any significant change. The bees are dedicated to their roles, and any attempt to question or change the established hierarchy is discouraged. In fact, the worker bees are even willing to sacrifice their lives for the collective good, as demonstrated in the courtroom scene, where they all remove their stingers in support of Barry's cause. Furthermore, the bees' relationship with humans is exploitative. The bees are forced to pollinate flowers to produce honey, which is then taken by humans for profit. The human capitalist system profits from the hard work of the bees without providing them with adequate compensation. The bees themselves even make reference to the golden parachutes of the industry leaders, indicating that the capitalist system is designed to benefit only the elite. Additionally, the film's portrayal of gender roles reinforces traditional patriarchal ideas. The queen bee is depicted as the most powerful and important figure in the hive, but male drones are seen as either lazy or incompetent. This reinforces the idea that only women can hold positions of power, while men are only fit for manual labor. Finally, the film's emphasis on individualism and the importance of personal fulfillment above collective action is problematic from a Marxist perspective. Barry's quest for personal fulfillment is depicted as being more important than the solidarity of the hive. The film celebrates individualism rather than promoting social change and collective action. In conclusion, B-movie can be critiqued from a Marxist perspective for its portrayal of labor, capitalism, gender roles, and individualism. The film reinforces problematic social norms and does not address the underlying systemic issues that contribute to the oppression of workers within the hive. Thank you.
This isn't a good fella. This is a bad fella.
Why doesn't someone just step on this little creep and we can all go home? Order in this. We're all thinking it. Order.
The Fast and the Furious films operate within the framework of late capitalism, in which commodities and consumerism are the driving forces of our society. This is true of Tokyo Drift as well, which centers around illegal street racing as a form of subcultural expression and escape from the monotony of everyday life. However, the film's celebration of fast cars and reckless driving ultimately serves to reinforce the hegemony of industrial forces, where freedom is mistakenly equated with consumption. Moreover, the film portrays labor in a particular way, as seen through the protagonist Sean Boswell's shift from a good kid to a street racer under the tutelage of Han Lee. Han is initially introduced as a wealthy capitalist, offering Sean a job at his mechanic shop, but as the film progresses, we learn that he is also involved in the underground racing scene. This dichotomy between labor and leisure underscores the film's underlying logic, that these two can never be separated and that one must submit to capitalist exploitation in order to access the pleasures of the leisure class. This problematic ideology is also evident in the film's representation of race, as the majority of the film is set in Tokyo and features an almost exclusively Asian cast. While it may seem that Tokyo Drift is championing diversity and inclusion, a closer examination reveals that the film's Asian characters are presented through a racialized lens. Asian people are portrayed as exotic, mysterious, and culturally insular, with their customs and traditions reduced to little more than window dressing for the film's predominantly white audience. While the film may not explicitly advance racist ideas, it certainly reinforces them through its visual and thematic representations of Asian culture and people. The film's portrayal of masculinity further reinforces patriarchal norms and gender expectations. Sean is positioned as the archetypal hero, fighting to maintain his honor and reputation as a racer in a world where only the strong survive. Throughout the film, he is seen engaging in physical fights and displaying his dominance over other men, while the women in the film largely serve as love interests or props to the male characters' displays of aggressions. Additionally, the film's obsession with cars and speed can be read as a hyper-masculine display of power and control, which ultimately reinforces the patriarchal order that is set at the center of the capitalist society. A Marxist critique of the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift exposes the film's dependence on capitalist ideology and its reinforcement of patriarchal, racist, and gendered norms. The film's celebration of labor and leisure as inseparable and its representation of Asian cultures and people highlight the ways in which capitalist society reinforces existing power structures and reinforces dominant ideologies. As individuals and societies continue to grapple with the effect of late capitalism, media such as Tokyo Drift serve as important cultural artifacts that require critical analysis and interrogation. In the case of the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, much of the film centers around themes of economic inequality and the desire to achieve financial success. The main character, Sean, is from a working-class family and ends up living with his father in Tokyo. He initially struggles to fit in with the wealthy students at his new school and eventually becomes involved in street racing as a way to prove his worth and gain respect. Sean's status as a working-class teenager who only gains recognition as a skilled driver would constitute a form of oppression, as working-class individuals are not typically afforded the same wealth and opportunities as the elite. Furthermore, the street racing scene in the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift can be seen as representation of capitalism itself, as the racers are all competing against each other for status, recognition, and financial rewards. The fastest and most skilled drivers are said to gain prestige and success as a result of their dominance on the racetrack. This competitive, individualistic environment represents a capitalist society in which people are encouraged to pursue personal gains and success rather than working together for the common good. The film The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift provides an interesting examination of the concepts of alienation and commodity fetishism. Though these ideas are often associated with Marxist theory, they are relevant to a range of philosophical discussions. In this particular film, the characters' relationships with one another and with material objects can be seen as examples of these two concepts. Alienation is a concept grounded in Marxist theory that describes the sense of separation or disconnection that individuals feel in their everyday lives. This disconnection can occur in a number of ways, including a sense of disconnection from the products they consume, the people around them, or even from their own sense of purpose or identity. In the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, this sense of alienation is embodied in the character of Sean Boswell, the film's protagonist. This sense of alienation is heightened by Sean's inability to speak Japanese fluently, which sets him apart from other racers and makes it difficult for him to truly participate in the local culture. Commodity fetishism, on the other hand, is a concept that describes the way in which people tend to ascribe value to material objects beyond their intrinsic worth. In Marxist theory, this stems from the notion that capitalism encourages people to see the value of something based on its exchange value rather than its use value. In other words, people tend to be more concerned with how much something is worth in the market than with what it actually does for them. In the context of the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, commodity fetishism can be seen in a way that the characters approach cars and racing. The film is filled with scenes of sleek cars, loud engines, and high-speed chases that almost border on the fetishistic. The characters are obsessed with the cars themselves, their make, model, speed, and performance, and often prioritize their values as status symbols or objects of desire above their practical purposes as models of transportation. This is exemplified by the character of DK, the film's primary antagonist, and a wealthy street racer who treats his cars as extensions of himself. He is seen driving a custom-made Nissan 350Z and later acquires a rare and expensive Mazda RX-7. Both of these cars are presented as objects of envy and desire, with other characters remarking on their beauty and power. However, it is worth noting that some characters do take more practical approach to cars, such as Sean's father, who is a mechanic and uses his cars primarily for work purposes. So how do these two ideas relate to each other in the film? One possible way to interpret this is that the character's obsession with cars and racing reflects a deeper sense of alienation from the world around them. Perhaps they feel disconnected from their own identities or value systems, and so look to material objects as a way to define themselves. In this sense, their fixation on cars can be seen as a form of fetishism that allows them to ascribe meaning and value to something outside of themselves. However, this is just one possible interpretation, and others may argue that the relationship between these concepts is more complex or nuanced. Overall, The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift provides an interesting lens through which to examine the concepts of alienation and commodity fetishism. By looking at the characters' relationships with each other and with material objects, we can gain a better understanding of how these ideas play out in our own lives and in the broader context of society and culture. Thank you.